Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Coleman, back with you for the Florida Aviation Network. We're live and in the clear here at Reno Air Races, if you didn't guess by the sound behind me, 2018. And we are here we always run across some fabulous, fabulous talent. Mike Ginter. Mike?
Hey, how are you, Ben? Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here.
It's always, I tell you, I didn't realize just how prolific you were in aviation until we just talked a little bit about it. But, Mike, I know that you're here representing AOPA. And you spent many, many years representing us. Thank you for your service with our government. I can't even tell. All right, I'll say Navy. I was going to say Secret Squirrel Aviation, but anyway, Mike, what we have going on behind us in these round motors and these V12s, we have to really dedicate some time into how to keep this going. And you spent a number of years as the president of NATA, North American Aviation Training Association. Right. And I'm going to quit talking because I want to hear what you have to say about what we're doing in the industry to keep this going.
All right. Well, thanks, Ben. I was proud to be a T6 owner for 12 years, based it in Central Virginia. And I've been flying my whole life, basically since 1978. High school senior, got my license and went to Embry-Riddle, then 27 years in the Navy flying off aircraft carriers, and a few dings and scrapes, but nothing that they had to write about, so it was good. And as soon as I had my last flying job, I bought a T6, and I got deep into the North American Trainer Association, which was the Type Club. And if you know anything about aviation, if you own an airplane, you really need to join the Type Club. It's the best resource for maintenance and advice and training and recurrency and for safety, the safety stats and best practices. So NATA it was very vibrant. We had about 770 members. I was on the board of directors. I was a formation check pilot for them, went to all the formation clinics and air shows. And in 2016, the husband and wife team that ran it for 31 years, the founders, they retired. So myself and a few other guys on the board decided we would take a shot at it. So I was the president for the last 2 years, and we had a great run. We had really a reinvention of what NATA was all about. And the North American Trainer Association takes care of the T6 population, Harvards and SNJs, T28s, P51s, and B25. So it's really 4 aircraft types in our type club, which is kind of a complex type club. But we tracked the safety records, and we tracked all the formation qualifications, and grew the membership by about 28%, and reinvented NATA. We called it NATA 2.0. And it was kind of exciting. We had a little buzz going on, and it's still happening. I just turned it over to a guy named Lumpy Lumpkin, who's a Mustang guy who flies with one of the CAF Mustangs, gunfighter, and he's a huge T6 guy, one of our check pilots. So NATA is alive and well, and over the last several years, we instituted a couple changes to the things we were doing for safety and for bringing in young people. What I will say is, the Warbird safety record mirrors the general aviation safety record, which is down at historic lows now. If you're familiar with the NAL report, AOPA just published the results, I think, last week. I think the general aviation accident rate's down around 0.84 per 100,000 hours, and that's fatals and non-fatals. And that's the historic low. That's great. And that's at a time when the flight hours and activity is actually increasing. So it's really a good news story. And as you can expect, everybody who flies knows that most of these accidents, vast majority, are pilot error. Unintentional flight into IMC, or control flight into terrain, or loss of control, or whatever. So NATA took a big interest in the safety numbers, and we studied the 10-year database, and we looked at how the T6 was being crashed, and how the T28 was being crashed, and how each type was, where the mishaps were. And then we focused our effort on trying to address those issues in each one of the 4 types. So for T6s, as you can imagine, they call it the pilot maker. I mean, it's a tail wheel, and it's classically known for its ground loops. So we focused our training in the T6s on annual recurrent training with a heavy emphasis on wheel landings, 3-point landings, crosswind landings, all kinds of landings, because that's where most of the stuff's happening. And I took a 1.3-hour hop with one of our instructors, a guy named Tom Richard, flies T6s down in Kissimmee. And it was the most impressive 1.3 hours of my flying for the last 1,100 hours in the T6. It was probably the best 1.3 I ever flew. So I'm a huge fan of the annual recurrent training, and that was the thrust of NATA. We encouraged all the type members to commit to themselves to do an annual recurring training flight. And if you want to bring a CFI that can also sign off your flight review, that's good too. But that's just a best practice. The safest type clubs have a vibrant annual recurrent training program. American Banana Society and Cirrus owners and pilots, Lance Air owners and builders. So we modeled that best practice, and we're trying to drive down the safety mishap rate for the T6s, Mustangs, T28s, B25s. You know, a lot of people ask me, are these old classic airplanes, the Warbirds, are they more dangerous than the newer airplanes? I said, absolutely not. I mean, how dangerous is your grandfather's 57 Chevy that your dad restored from the ground up, and now it's a showpiece? And the people that own these airplanes, as you can see behind us, they're gorgeous. I mean, they're ground up restored, and they're subject to an annual FAA authorized inspection. Most of them are standard category, some are experimental, and they have the annual condition inspection. I mean, so it's a rigorous program. And so we've had to get in front of a few mishaps with the media to kind of tell that story, because they think that the old airplanes are more dangerous. And so we remind them that pilot error is usually the issue, and just like the Air France flight that went into the ocean, and just like the Korean airliner that crashed at San Francisco. And so we try to get ahead of the narrative, and that helps. But we're taking a strong inward look at safety in the North American Trainer Association.
Mike, answer me a question. You've been around aviation long enough. Do these airplanes fix themselves?
Yes. I had never spent $1 on my T6 in 12 years. No, absolutely they don't. But well, we have qualified mechanics, and thankfully we have a pretty vibrant economy of parts suppliers and new old stock, and some people are now making new parts. So it's a capitalistic system. There's a pretty strong demand signal, so there's people out there making stuff, and they're getting PMAs to build the new parts. And I mean, I don't see Warbirds getting parked because of lack of parts.
If I was a mechanic and I wanted to get involved with aviation maintenance, and furthermore get involved with vintage aircraft maintenance, how would I do it?
So that's a great question. Everybody knows about the pilot shortage. It's been well advertised. The truth is, it's actually an aviation workforce shortage. There's a shortage in mechanics as well. So A&P mechanics, we're starting to see, it's not really something we're measuring, so it's an anecdotal thing, but it's harder and harder to find a qualified A&P who knows how to work on Warbirds with the old hydraulic systems and old electrical systems and all that. So NATA shifted its focus on its scholarship program for years and years. I think we gave about $78,000 away over the 10-year period to flight students at the University of Dubuque in Iowa. Great cause. They host our formation clinic every year. We have a great relationship with Dubuque, and we were happy to give those kids money. But when I took over, I wanted to focus our charitable giving to generate the next, or inspire the next generation of warbird mechanics. So we started looking for young A&Ps or kids that are almost done with their A&P, and they apply, or somebody sponsors them and lets us know about them, and we're going to send them to the Baker School to finish their A&P, or if they're A&Ps already, we're going to work with their employer to let them have a week off, and we send them to a thing called NATA Boot Camp. And the very first one is finishing up tomorrow in Culpeper, Virginia. So we have a NATA member who's an A&P and an IA. He's a phenomenal mechanic. His name's Tom Hazel. He's a Culpeper, Virginia guy. And NATA has sponsored two, I'll say kids, they're young adults. They're already MPs, and they're finishing up their time at NATA Boot Camp. It's the first running of this thing, so we're trying to see how it works, giving them a total introduction into basic warbird maintenance. Taking a battery out of a T6 is different than taking a battery out of a 172. And, there's a lot of, how do you jack up a T28? Well, we have a T6 and a T28 and a Navion and a couple of Stearman. We've got a bunch of warbirds down at Culpeper, and the members there are letting us use the airplanes, and it's a great thing. So we are completely committed to bringing young AMPs, exposing them to the awesome industry that is warbird maintenance. I mean, I know warbird mechanics are in high demand, and if you're credible and you're good and you're thorough, you're going to be able to command a price that lets you have a pretty healthy living. So we're excited about it.
Well, and I've been told, Mike, that we're a dying breed, and these warbirds, they're going to go away or go to a museum. If we allow that to happen, it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. However, there is a way to keep these things going, and it's through dedication, through a little bit of pride, through passion, and that's what the one thing that if anything that we can share with Obi and his group and his minions, I call them, Obi Young. That's for you, Obi. Is to introduce the passion back into this industry that actually drove and created the safety that we recognize today is passion.
That's right.
Yeah, I see some passion kind of oozing out of your pores too.
Well, I love it. I love it. You know, they all. No, I'm glad nobody told me what it would cost to own a T6 for 11 years because, you know, I basically bought it on a shoestring budget. I had $200 extra a month after hangar, mortgage, and insurance to cover gas. I thought that was great, $200 a month. And then the gas prices went to $6, and you know, just my credit card exploded. But that's okay. You know, people say, "Well, how can you spend $500,000 over 11 years?" And I was working in the Navy. I was working for every dollar I spent. And how can you justify spending that kind of money? And the conversation quickly turns by me to how do you justify a wife or how do you justify kids? Because it's all, you love it. It's a passion. Yeah. So when people ask about these airplanes, as warbirds flying at the age of 75 and maybe approaching 80 for the ones that were you know, flying in the late 30s, early 40s, the T6 is just celebrated at Oshkosh, the 80th anniversary of the T6. It was actually our NADA forte at Oshkosh this year. So I can tell you that we had 91 T6s on the ramp at Oshkosh. We encouraged all of our members to bring them. We had 74 airplanes in the air show on Tuesday, which was dedicated to North American Trainer Association. It was a T6 birthday party, but we invited the family. So we had all the Mustangs, all the T28s, all the B25s, and a bunch of formations of T6s, and the aerobatic acts. The Geico guys came and played with us. The Aeroshell team played, and even the Canadian Harvard team came down with the Harvards. So the point is at that, I did an interview with EAA before that air show, and they said, "What's the future?" And I said, "Well, we're already planning the 100th." And they were kind of, you know, I mean, they're enthusiastic at EAA, but the truth is, this year at our formation clinic in Dubuque, we had 18 new T6 owners looking to get their formation cards to go through our training pipeline.
What age grade?
Youngest ones are probably in their late 30s, and some are in their 40s. I mean, it's, you know, the warbird movement is basically, you know, like it was for me. The kids are almost out of the house. You know, you're starting to get a little more disposable income, but just it's the pilot's dilemma, right? You know, you fell in love with it in college, and then you came back to it when you could afford it. But I'm very bullish on the warbird community, and there's a huge passion. People love to see the warbirds. They rank number 3 in the ICAS world for what draws a crowd, right behind the big jet teams and then the demo teams, the jet demo teams. So warbirds are drawing people, and you see that here. I mean, a lot of these airplanes are warbirds. So,
Mike, we're and I know you have to go get set up. We kind of clotheslined you coming in here today, but to kind of cap this off, I'm going to share a phrase with you that you may want to coin this. You've heard the phrase, "Where there's a will, there's a way."
I have.
Okay, you show us the will, young ones out there, and I'm talking about anybody younger than 60. You show us the will, we'll show you the way.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, so I've got a new job with AOPA. I work in airports and state advocacy, and I've believed this since I was 17 when I started flying. You can build a mile of road and drive a mile. You can build a mile of runway and see the world. And the runway is the most important main street of any town. So I would encourage anybody interested, remotely interested in flying, to go take a discovery flight, see what it's about, and you're going to know within 45 minutes of starting that flight if this is for you or it's not for you. And there are plenty of opportunities to help young kids, young adults with scholarships and grant money, and the pilot population is very generous. So I'd say jump on in, the water's fine.
I love it. Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
And we'll see you at your tent, and we're going to sign this one off, but it's not the last one. This is only the beginning. Talk to you later. Ben Coleman, Florida Aviation Network, back to you guys.